The following video is intended to train ambulance personnel of S.T.A.R Ambulance to effectively and safely transport bariatric patients using the Stryker Bariatric cot and the Tran Safe bariatric ramp system. It is important to familiarize yourself with all the necessary equipment and ensure that you have it all with you before transporting any patient. Let us begin with the Stryker Bariatric cot. You will notice immediately that this cot is 6 inches wider than the traditional ambulance cot. It is important to also note that it is 30 pounds heavier. It has a maximum weight capacity of 850 pounds at its highest load position and up to 1,600 pounds at its lowest load position. The cot is manually raised and lowered to different height options as the traditional Stryker cot using the same red handle system. We will cover safe lifting techniques later in this video. Additionally, the head of the cot can be adjusted to infinite angles between supine and Fowler positions using the same hydraulic lever as the traditional Stryker cot. Unlike the traditional Stryker cot, the bariatric cot comes with large steering handles that can be attached to maneuver a patient while in the lowest load position without requiring the technicians to bend over. Ensure that the bariatric cot has its tow cables connected at the head of the cot, fastened at the base adapters seen here. That the cables are positioned above the red metal crossbar. Next, check to make sure the tow ring runs through the tow harness loop bracket at the head of the cot's outer rail. Finally, seat belts and side rails operate in the same manner as the traditional cot. All seat belts should be secured comfortably but snugly to the patient, and side rails should remain upright whenever a patient is on the cot. Next, let us look at the necessary equipment and assembly of the Tran Safe bariatric ramp system. The necessary equipment includes 2 collapsible metal ramps, a transition loading plate, a minimum of 3 hand screw fasteners, a motorized winch cable and hook that should be pre-installed and secured to the floor of the ambulance with 2 hand screw fasteners, a detachable remote control for the winch, and finally, safety gloves and goggles. After first donning your safety gloves and goggles, next prepare to attach the transition plate to the ambulance. As its name implies, the transition plate serves as a transition point between the ramps and the ambulance floor. Align the transition plate with the roller bar on top so that its 3 pre-drilled holes align with the threaded floor plates on the ambulance floor. Next, secure the transition plate to the ambulance floor by hand tightening the fasteners through the aligned plate holes. Firmly hand tight is sufficient. Do not use additional tools to tighten the fasteners. It is important to note that the rear doors of the ambulance will not close when the transition plate is in place. It must be removed and the doors closed when the ambulance is in motion. Once the transition plate is in place, unfold the loading ramps. Make sure you are wearing the provided safety gloves to prevent pinching and potential hand injuries. The ramp's pinch points are painted yellow and should be handled with due caution. Once unfolded, attach the ramps to the transition plate by placing the hooked end on the extended rods of the transition plate. Ensure that the ramps are straight and fully extended. After the transition plate and ramps are assembled, inspect that the motorized winch is securely mounted to the ambulance floor by ensuring the 2 hand fasteners are tightened down. Next, attach the cable of the remote control to the winch at the three-pronged outlet on the winch's side. Next, one technician should apply firm hand tension to the hooked cable, while another technician begins to extend the cable using the remote control. Maintain tension as the cable is extended to prevent tangles inside the winch. Inspect the cable for any fraying. If any fraying is observed, or you suspect the cable is unsafe, do not use the winch and immediately contact a supervisor. As always, patient handling is of the utmost importance for their safety and all the crew members' safety. It is likely that the safe movement of a bariatric patient will involve use of additional crew members or facility staff. Once the patient has been loaded to the cot, usually by sheet lift, direct the other crew members or assisting staff how to safely help lower the cot to its lowest loading position. Make sure that everyone's hands are on the thick black outside rail of the cot and away from any pinch points. Once at its lowest level, attach the steering handles to the head and foot end of the cot. Have one technician positioned at the foot and one at the head end and begin making your way to the ambulance. You should already have the Tran Safe ramp system assembled upon arriving at the ambulance with the patient loaded to the cot. Align the cot so that the cot wheels are centered to each ramp head first. Remove the steering handles. Make sure that the extended tow cable is beneath the cot horn bracket in the ambulance. Do not have the tow cable running over the cot horn bracket. The tow cable must also be over the roller. Double check the tow cable for the absence of any fraying or weak points. Then attach the tow hook to the tow ring at the head of the cot. One technician will be the winch operator, while the remaining technicians will be responsible for guiding the cot along the ramps. Those guiding the cot should stand on the outside of the ramps, never between the ramps, for in the unlikely event of a cable break, this could result in serious bodily harm. This should be a slow but consistent retraction, avoiding jerking-like motions. During both loading and unloading phases, there will be a brief period of time where not all wheels will be touching either the ramp or the ambulance floor as the head end crests the transition plate. As the cot enters the ambulance, the wheels at the head will remain in the air until enough weight shifts from the foot end to the head end. As the weight shifts, the head wheels will come down to the ambulance floor, causing the foot wheels to lift off the ramp. Some shifting will occur, and it is the job of the guiding crew members to ensure that the cot wheels do not leave the sides of the ramp. Additionally, make sure that the patient's extremities are protected from striking anything inside the ambulance. Once the last wheels have cleared the ramp and are on the ambulance floor, the winch operator should stop retraction. The cot must now be manually wheeled into the horn bracket. The small guide wheel at the head of the cot along the bench seat side will sit outside the horn bracket in its locked position. Do not retract the cot to its final locked position using the winch. Instead, remove the tow hook and retract it to its start position, making sure not to accidentally hook the horn brackets or any other object. Once the cot is locked in place, remove the ramps from the transition plate and set on the ground. Next, remove the transition plate from the ambulance floor by unscrewing the fasteners and placing them back in the storage case. Place the transition plate beneath the cot for transportation. The back doors of the ambulance can now be closed to maximize patient privacy and climate control. While still wearing leather safety gloves, collapse each ramp by folding the beveled end to the inside first. Next, fold the hooked end that was connected to the transition plate over the top and secure with belt. One ramp will be stored in the tall outside compartment of the ambulance. The other ramp should be secured to the bench seat. Do this by bringing the ramp into the patient compartment via the side ambulance door. You may need to temporarily disconnect the safety webbing in order to slide the ramp onto the bench. Once on the bench, use seat belts to secure the ramp in place for transport. Next, if you disconnected the safety webbing, reconnect the safety webbing before transporting. Now that all equipment has been safely secured, the ambulance can disembark to its destination. Upon arriving at the destination, prepare for unloading the patient by first redonning safety goggles and gloves. Next, reassemble the transition plate and the ramps in the same way as during the patient loading phase.
Go ahead and unlock and pull down just
Next, extend the tow cable with just enough slack to allow the foot end wheels of the cot to reach the ramps. Then make sure to run the tow cable beneath the horn bracket and attach the hook to the tow ring. Now crew members outside the truck can release the cot from the lock bar and roll the cot so that the wheels will be centered on the ramp during unloading. Once crew members responsible for guiding the cot down the ramps are safely positioned to the outside of the ramps, the cot can be wheeled down the ramps until the tow cable is pulled taut. The winch operator may now begin extending the tow cable, allowing the cot to descend the ramps. Make sure that the tow cable ends up on top of the roller. In the event that the tow cable ends up to the side of the roller, retract the tow cable, bringing the cot fully back into the ambulance, and prepare to attempt again. Do not attempt to manually lift the cable onto the roller while attached to the cot. Crew members outside will once again need to guide the cot so that its wheels stay centered on the ramps. Do not pull on the cot during unloading. Let the winch do the work. Once all the wheels of the cot are safely on the ground, the tow cable can be disconnected and retracted into the ambulance. Reattach the steering arms, and now the patient can be taken inside. Lifting the cot to the appropriate height in order to transfer the patient requires important position and technique for the safety of both the patient and the crew. Position lifters on all four sides, with a trained member of S.T.A.R personnel operating the handles at the foot and at the head of the cot. Bend at the knees and not at the waist. Lift with your legs by keeping your back straight and upright, as well as your arms bent at the elbow. It may be necessary to only lift the cot halfway to the desired height at first. Then, allowing everyone to reposition, use the same methods to lift the cot higher. Upon returning to the ambulance with an empty cot, reload the cot and the Tran Safe ramp system in the same manner as during the patient loading phase, ensuring that all equipment is safely secured. There are some additional considerations you must take when involved in the transportation of the bariatric patient. To safely use the Tran Safe ramp system, you must park in a staging area on level ground with a minimum clearance of 40 feet in length and 14 feet in width. For safety, always apply the emergency parking brake. Next, it is important to make note of the subtle differences in cot height locking positions of the Stryker bariatric cot versus the traditional Stryker cot. As you can see here, there is a considerable gap between the lowest locked position on the bariatric cot compared to its second lowest position. Finally, The safe and proper use of all the equipment involved when transporting the bariatric patient takes significantly more time than that of the traditional patient. Therefore, it is even more important to be aware of your environment and climate conditions. Ensure that the patient is comfortable and properly covered for the weather. This will potentially include the use of multiple sheets, blankets, and towels. If parking in an indoor or confined location, make sure to turn off the ambulance motor and battery system when not actively using the motorized winch. This will help prevent filling the patient compartment with exhaust. However, the ambulance motor and battery system must be running in order to operate the winch. It is important that you frequently practice with the equipment and procedures in this video, as well as review this presentation as necessary to maintain your personal competence. Thank you for watching this training presentation.